The opinions and statements made by the guests of the Success in Practice podcast are their own, and I do not endorse or accept responsibility for their positions. Any information given by myself or the guests is educational in intention and not to be taken as medical advice. If you choose to act on the content involved in the podcast, you do so at your own risk. Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Success in Practice podcast. Today, I'm joined by Simon Ashley. Simon is the founder and CEO of Atune Health Centres. He's also an accredited practicing osteopath. Simon graduated from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, RMIT, with a double degree in clinical science and clinical osteopathy, and has worked in the Hunter as an osteopath since the year 2000. He established Atune Health Centres in 2006 from his home, and now it's grown quite substantially. He started with a vision to provide holistic healthcare to the local community. His dream of establishing an integrated one-stop healthcare centre is developing every year as Atune continues to grow. Since its inception, Atune has grown from a single employee in 2006 to over 116 team members. Yes, that's 116 team members with 2 locations and 17 different health professions. Simon also received the 2019 Lake Macquarie Business Person of the Year Award. Simon has travelled the world studying osteopathy, health and nutrition, broadening his understanding of the principles of living with optimal health. He has worked within a Palestinian refugee camp, war-torn Iraq, and with the less fortunate also in Los Angeles. Simon is passionate about health and seeing individuals and the community discover the truth about their own health, restoring lives one at a time. He believes that we're created to be healthy and whole, and that this state of health should be maintained to ensure freedom from sickness. Simon and his wife Melanie have 4 beautiful young children. Simon has no greater joy than to spend time watching and enjoying his kids grow. I tend to empathise with that. Simon, mate, thanks for being on the podcast and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to having a good chat.
Yeah, definitely. If you've seen any of the previous episodes, we tend to kind of get into a good old chat. So let's get into it. Like always, I want to know about you, Simon. I want to know your backstory and your early influences. Tell us about your childhood growing up and what ultimately led you to osteopathy.
So look, I started as an osteopath back in 1996 at uni, and basically I was, I suppose I was drawn to osteo because I loved the manual side of things. I saw an osteopath when I was in year 12, never heard of it, I was a country boy, and actually seeing that was just absolutely incredible, and I'm like, wow, I was sold from that moment, particularly the philosophy around the holistic view that we have. We look at the whole body as a unit, and I just was taken, and I've really loved being an osteopath and the philosophy that we have ever since.
Yeah, great. And so tell us a bit more about you kind of growing up. I mean, school years and your, I guess, background with your parents. Did a lot of that influence how you kind of turned out and what ultimately led you to, I guess, not just osteopathy, but also, running a business in the way that you do? What were some of those early influences that were outside of osteopathy as a young person? What kind of shaped you to be where you are now?
Yeah, so my dad, when we were on the farm, so he was a farmer, he was a dairy farmer, so that's a very hard manual job. And when I reckon I was about 7, he actually blew a disc out in his back. I'll never forget it. He sneezed in our hallway and collapsed to the ground. And because we were on the farm, we had no services. We were a long way from anywhere, very isolated. And so I used to go and watch what the physios and chiros did because that's all we had around. And I used to copy them at home. And by the age of 16, Dad probably didn't go anywhere else. He would only just come home and see me. And I used to treat him. And he just, how they talk about, you just got that feel, that touch. He used to say that about myself. And so that really, I guess, was a big shaping influence in my life, because when you got your dad saying how good you were, I always felt like I was going to progress into that path. It was always physio until I saw an osteo work, and I just fell in love with the philosophy and the technique. So,
Yeah, right. And remind me again, what was the town that you grew up in?
so I grew up in a town called Terang,
Right.
which is in Western Victoria.
Okay, so obviously it was fairly fortunate that you over to Melbourne and those two courses there, RMIT and VU.
Yes.
What attracted you to, I guess, one over the other?
Look, I don't think even VUT was around when I started. I'm pretty sure VUT started after I began
Right.
at RMIT. I think it was a year or two later. Again, sketchy, but I'm pretty sure RMIT was the only option back then. And so, I mean, I loved my training through RMIT. It was a wonderful university, and it was a great course. And I felt like I came out from that very prepared for the world that I then entered into.
Okay, and going into that course, were you straight out of high school?
Yeah, straight out of high school. So I basically went straight out of high school. So I changed my preferences when I saw an osteopath, probably a couple of weeks before I had to finalise them.
Yeah.
And then I put in osteo. And then I remember they had the job interview, or not the job interview, they had the interview to get into the course back then.
Yes.
So basically they would have a sort of cut off. So you had to write a whole resume about why you wanted to do it. Then you went in for an actual interview. And I remember I knew that little about osteo. I just looked up the definition of it in the book that I had, and a couple of other bits and pieces, and that was all. But I mean, I was so passionate about wanting to be in the manual therapy world that I think that sort of came across.
Yeah, look, speaking to a couple of other people on the podcast in a very similar situation to you, where they had to interview, it was always their passion that got them across the line rather than their knowledge.
Absolutely.
And I think from talking to them, they mentioned that that's really what the people were looking for that were interviewing. Do you remember who interviewed you, Simon?
Look, to be honest, I have no idea. I can't recall that at all. No.
Right. So you get to your first week, your first class of osteopathy. Are you one of the very few people there straight out of high school? Is it mainly mature age
Yeah,
students?
look, there was only, I reckon there would have been a handful. I reckon less than half. I mean, our year we only had 20 people. And then that dropped down to about 13 by fourth year, 13 or 14 maybe. And then we had a few extras come in from the other courses, and then that was it. So, we were a very, very small but very tight group.
Yeah. And how did you find that being amongst other people? I mean, you're quite fresh-faced. You're from high school. Were there other people there that were maybe post-grad, or had done previous degrees or had done previous health degrees? Did you find that was a bit of a climb up for you? Did you have to kind of step up?
Oh, absolutely. So there was quite a few that had done, I think, health science, because we were at RMIT, we had the chiropractors, we had the osteopaths, and I think we had the health sciences, and we all sort of did it together, and they did a 3-year health science degree, and then they came back and did osteo. So yeah, they were great because they'd already done a lot of the sciences, so we could really glean off their knowledge and their understanding as they had already gone through that. So that would certainly, I think, upskilled us a little bit, but yeah, it certainly made us catch up to where we needed to be a lot quicker.
Yeah. And what was that first, I guess, exposure to osteopathy like? Were when were you hooked? Like, when did you finally go, aha, I get it. This is what it is, and I really
Look,
love it.
I was hooked the day that I saw that osteopath work. Way back then, it was just the philosophy. I just loved the fact that they looked at the body as a unit, that
Yeah.
structure governed function, and that we're not here fixing anything. We're just using the body's incredible healing mechanism to actually facilitate healing. And that philosophy, and then just working with the body like that was for me. And then I just found that uni was just learning more about that amazing, the
So
amazing body and how it all works.
did you know that prior to going into university? I mean, that philosophy and those tenets of osteopathy, those principles, was that
Well,
something you were aware of?
I think I was, because it was what I resonated when I saw the osteopath. I didn't probably know the full extent of it. Absolutely.
Yep.
It wasn't until we did the foundational, this is what osteopathy is all about, that I
Yep.
probably learnt what the actual terminology was. I guess I just connected to the way things were done, and then, later on associated that with words that
Yep.
made sense.
Who were some of those early influences in your, I guess, university life in terms of really people that you remember that stood out in your mind as being, quite influential to the way that you either saw osteopathy or the way that you ended up treating?
Yeah, Nick Kelly was one of the key lecturers back in the day. Margaret, I can't think of a second name. It's been a few years now. But she did the cranial and the fascial. And then I have to say that my two first bosses, Kim Wheeler and Bruce Sutton, up in Newcastle area, they both were great influence. So I actually, I very much wanted to do the both streams. I wanted to do the cranial and the functional, and I also really wanted to do the structural. And so I guess that those four people really shaped my thinking and the way that I practiced. And I feel like, as an osteopath, I wanted to have all the tools. I didn't want to just go down one path. I wanted to be able to, do both aspects in a very, a very good way. And I suppose that now, after 25 years, I feel like I've got a good balance there of how I treat. Not that I treat a whole bunch these days.
Right. Okay. So, graduating out of university, talking to a lot of people who came out of RMIT around that time that you graduated, they were very competent practitioners, quite kind of knowledgeable. The anatomy was the anatomical knowledge and physiological knowledge was really quite good. But in terms of actually expanding your skill set, in terms of structural expansion, and then more, I guess, indirect expansion, what is it? Where did you go and learn, I guess, a lot of the postgraduate material that kind of started to really round off your skill set? Like, tell us about some of the postgrad stuff that you did.
So look, I did the biomechanics, a couple of courses with that. I did the cranial courses. I did several of those, and I loved all of them. And when it came to structural, I always was very good structurally. So a good mate of mine that I went through uni with was Craig Russell, who now does a lot of structural stuff. So I used to do a lot of workshopping with him, back in the day when we were students, and continue, to talk about him about, those sort of things. So I feel like I've got a really good foundation there when it came to structural. I was a bit more, I leaned towards that type of treatment throughout uni. And because I was also a sports trainer right through uni, as well as a massage therapist. So I did a lot of work in sports clubs and that sort of thing. So I really gained some really good experience. And then when I worked with Bruce Sutton, he trained me up for a couple of years, which was also great, very structural. So I feel like, I had one employer that was very structural, the other employer, which was Kim Wheeler, who is an amazing, cranial therapist, biomechanics therapist. I learned a lot from her. Both of them, part of, getting going was, they trained me and they coached me in different areas, and I did my own courses as well. So I think the combination of everything, I think that really helped sort of, develop those skills in those areas.
Yeah, right. And I guess you began working in the year 2000. You mentioned to me that you did it out of your own, you did it out of your home. You just started on your own out of your house.
Oh no, so I started as an associate with Kim and Bruce.
Yes.
Yep. And then I traveled around the world for 6 months. I came back and then I started my own business, which I always had dreams of starting, a multidisciplinary practice.
Yeah, right. And what year was that? That was 2003?
That was 2007 really, end of 2006. Yep.
Right. Okay. So end of 2006, you go into business on your own. And I guess what was that experience like for you, starting off in 2006 on your own?
No one can prepare you for running your own business. It's certainly not, it's not the easiest thing in the world. It's like really having another baby or another, it's a whole nother world in itself. And, there's one thing to work in a business, there's another thing to work on a business. And I learned that early on, that to actually build a good business, you can't just be working in it. You actually have to make it your career to actually build a business, and develop skills that will allow a business to grow and to flourish. So backing off my osteo and, like bringing on others that could do it, and then putting my time to actually building a business was part of, how I began to grow Attune.
Yeah, right. I want to take you back to, I guess, your associateship days, working
Yep.
at two different clinics. What did you take away? And I don't want this to be it's not about like a hit piece or anything, but what did you take away from, I guess, working with traditional osteopathic practitioners, let's call them,
Yep.
for lack of a better phrase? What are some things that you learnt that you thought, hold on a sec, there's got to be a better way than this? Or on the flip side, I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question. What is it that you learned that you really took away and you've held on to today in terms of business? And then,
Yep.
did you notice some things amongst those clinics that we go, hold on a sec, this is something that really holds us back as osteopaths, having this kind of mentality? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Look, I think that in life you can learn from everything and every situation. And so I guess I looked at, the clinics I was in, and I saw how they did the practices that they did. I think from an osteopathic perspective, I think the way that I see how we work is that we can sometimes become so indirect that we become so what's the word? I guess we become so successful in our own minds about what we can do that we actually fail to bring people on the journey of that, and we lose some of the clients, some of the referrers, if you like, because we do work in a way that people don't quite understand. And so being able to assess where your client is currently at and then take them on the journey to where they need to go, I think is a really important skill that no one really teaches. But I think that's what I learnt, because what I found is in a structural clinic, people could understand because structure, it's very much there for them. Whereas in the cranial clinic, most people are coming for that purpose. But I couldn't do cranial in the structural clinic and vice versa because people were, I suppose, cultured differently. So, but then I started to learn as I developed, hang on, well, how do I get people to go into this place? And so learning how to navigate people and actually work them into where they need to go is certainly a skill that I think is really important. And we sometimes, because of what we can do, we put that on our clients, and then our clients don't appreciate what it is that we're doing and actually don't get the help that they need because we actually haven't met them where they're at. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I learnt between those two clinics is actually learning how to know where one of your clients is at and then work with them rather than what I think they need.
Right. Okay. And is that something that you learned at those two clinics, kind of as a combination thing, or was that something that you observed that wasn't happening?
Well, it's a bit of both because I guess where like Attune, my business has come in is the fact that I've also seen that there's holes in our whole medical system around how we care for people, and the fact that osteos can't do everything, a GP can't do everything, a naturopath can't do everything, and sometimes we have a God mentality that we can. And that does limit all of us because we're not God, but together we are so much more effective if we recognize our scope and we work with other people. So I certainly have come from that perspective, and I got that perspective very early on in my uni days. And so I guess I look through the world that way a little bit as well, and hence how the business that I have formed has sort of come about.
Yeah, okay. All right. So I want to ask you then, in terms of the progress taken for Attune. Am I saying that right? Is it?
Yep, Attune. Yep.
Right. So it started off quite small with you as a solo practitioner, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And then tell us about, I guess, some of the gross steps that you saw or that you took within that clinic, say in the first 5 years, from doing it on your own to then maybe getting a receptionist, then maybe taking on another practitioner. and then getting maybe a clinic admin in, looking at your marketing, looking at your sales. Can you give us some of the milestones, the first major milestones in the first 5 years, where that were taken in that practice?
Look, I think the first milestone is opening the doors and actually doing it yourself. That's massive for a lot of people. And the thing is that people don't recognise all that, because you're everything. You're the bookkeeper, you're the accountant, you're the receptionist. There is so much you have to do and know about to actually just open the doors for your business. So it's not just as simple as putting a shingle out and off you go. There's many a thing. So that's a big milestone. I think the next is actually getting people to join into your vision. And very much I had a vision. It wasn't just come and join my business. I have a very specific vision for what it is that I want to accomplish. So to get people on board with your vision, that is a massive milestone, because you've got other people who see what you're trying to achieve and want to be a part of that. And so working with them, helping them, fostering, their passion, and helping them grow in the environment that you've created is, that's a massive milestone and a big step for any person in business. And then I guess moving out of my premise, my home. So I was in my home for only 18 months. So I had 2 other practitioners that started, was a psychologist and a breathing therapist. And then I got a massage therapist, and then I had my first osteopath to join me. And so basically we were too big to be in my house. So we moved out into our first commercial premises. And that whole journey of, getting a building, renting a space, decking it out the way you need it to be, again, that is a very big, and there's a lot of things in that, like dealing with council, dealing with DA approvals. There's a lot that needs to happen, and you need to be aware of to actually, pull that together in an effective way. People can do it in all sorts of ways, but making sure that you're doing it correctly so that everyone is safe is really important. And so that is a massive milestone to get your own commercial, premises and building. And then I guess, they're probably the first 5 years, that probably takes up the first 5 years in terms of milestones. Getting receptionists, getting admin, that's a significant part of taking the load off you and doing everything. I remember the day I didn't have to do telling the takings for the day, like the end, and someone else was doing that for me. That was a big milestone for me, because, not only do you see 16 clients or 15 clients throughout the whole day, then you've got another hour where you're balancing the books at night. So having someone doing that, that was a great step. So all of those, there's lots of steps like that you have to take, and they are big steps.
So let me then focus in a little bit more on those first 5 years, I guess, from 2006 till maybe 2011, 2012. Look, that was I can empathise with you, because that was at the time that I was really growing my practices as well. I started in 2003, and then we took some major milestones around 2009, getting into a bigger premises and so forth, much like yourself. And I remember sitting down with one of the first guys that really put together my website and doing all that kind of stuff. And he said to me, he goes, "Why don't you try running Google Ads?" I remember, and back in those days, we still had the yellow pages. We still had all that stuff, right? And internet, I think, was just going from dial-up to cable. And he said, "Why don't you try running some Google Ads?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, people jump on Google and they search for you, and then you come up because you've paid to come up. It's pay per click." And I asked him, "Well, how much does it cost?" He goes, "Oh, probably for you're probably around maybe 3 or 4 cents a click." That was back then, which is ridiculous now when you think about it. When did you start to look at your online presence and marketing and sales and all that? Was that something that you looked at pretty early on in your I guess business journey?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Not hugely. I did have a good presence. I guess I focused more on building the culture and the team. I felt that, if you have a good team and they're doing a great job and they're providing a really good service, the rest sort of follows, particularly in a small town city like Newcastle, where it's not a big city. word of mouth and what the community says is the most important advertising. And yet some of the media stuff, I've got into a lot of that as we got bigger. But in those early days, I really focused on providing the best service and allowing my team to do the same, which then naturally flowed and built the business. There was a presence that we had, but there wasn't a huge media or marketing. So I've only put on a marketing person in the last, probably since the new building, just before the new building, so probably six years ago.
Right. And I guess let me ask you this before I forget about it. What made you leave Victoria, mate? Like, what made you go from Victoria to the Hunter? I mean, because your family was, I mean, you're a country boy, and country boys are generally quite close knit within the family. And what made you? Because it's one of the issues we have now is that obviously there's a lot of students coming out of Melbourne. You'd know this. I mean, you're up in the Hunter and you're trying to attract graduates, right, out there. I'm in Sydney. I'm trying to attract graduates. It's really hard to get people out of their hometown.
Absolutely. That's one of the hardest things.
Yeah. What was it for you that made you leave Victoria and move to the Hunter?
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, I had a vision for what I wanted to do with my life very early on. And so that meant that I wanted to firstly be the very best osteopath I could be. So I got an opportunity to work up in the Hunter with, with some people that I highly respected, and I was going to get heaps of work. Like, I worked 6 days a week for a couple of years, full, because we can't get anyone up here. You come as a graduate up to Newcastle, and I could open a book and you'd be just about full. I mean, you wouldn't be completely because you're new and it takes time. But in terms of the clientele, there's so much more clientele up here, and the experience that you get and the training that you would get, is second to none, really. So that's really what attracted me. I was very open to, like, I just for a few years I just want to learn how to be a great osteopath, and do well with my profession, and that's why I decided I had a great opportunity. The Hunter looked great. I didn't know much about the Hunter, but I was happy just to see the world a bit. And I didn't have any ties. I didn't have a wife then. I didn't need to stay. I love my family and I miss them dearly, but they love coming up to Newcastle now because it's a holiday destination for them. Yeah. So very much it was about the opportunity for me to actually really learn to be a great osteopath.
Yeah, right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching and listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel on whichever platform that you are listening on. If any of the conversations have resonated with you and you feel that I can help elevate your practice, you can find me at successinpractice.net. That is, the Success in Practice program can be found at successinpractice.net. The Success in Practice program is the signature program that takes a practitioner who may be struggling with retaining patients. They may not be certain about building effective treatment strategies, and they may feel somewhat anxious and doubtful about what they are going to do with a patient. And they are not really accelerating in the real world of private practice. It takes this practitioner and it turns their careers right around to the point where the patients have an effective diagnosis and a real treatment plan that they can take home. Patients are happy to book in multiple sessions with you, and they are confident about your abilities. And more importantly, you now have direction and are confident about your own abilities. The program streamlines how you operate as a practitioner. Guys, you should have been taught this at university, but you weren't. You may have been practicing for the last few years thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way of engaging with patients and getting them results. Well, there is. And this is what the program delivers. Go to successinpractice.net and check out the options available to you. See where I can help you easily grow your patient list and finally earn the rewarding income that you deserve. For all the information on how you can reach me personally, check out the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to the chat transcripts from these podcasts. These are valuable and a wealth of information. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Guys, leave a comment if there's any questions on this episode, and please, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the show. And so your vision from the start was always to be multidisciplinary. Where do you see the, Or actually, let me rephrase this question. The osteopathy part in that, has
Yep.
that always been a cornerstone in terms of the vision for the treatment capabilities of your clinic?
Agreed, absolutely. I mean, osteo is all about the whole body and working with that whole person and looking for the cause, not the symptom. And I guess, when it comes to that, I see that we have an incredible philosophy around health and well-being. And that philosophy, though, isn't just limited to us. And if we can bring in other people into that and help them in some way gather into that, then it's going to help more people. And you're going to see a better outcome for your clients. And that's really what I started to see. And so osteopathy absolutely is a foundation for a lot of what's happening. But, lifestyle medicine is massive now these days, and that's what our clinic is. It's a lifestyle medicine clinic. So we've got 8 GPs currently working at Attune.
Yeah.
All of them are lifestyle medical GPs. So they have a standard half an hour consult with every client. So they're giving that bit extra because to actually do a proper integrated care, you need to have that little bit longer. And then you've got all the services that they have at their fingertips to actually work with, to actually, you're not having competition, you're not having fighting. And that's where I found as an osteopath, when I first started out, people first rejected completely what an osteopath was. Doctors didn't want to know us up here. And it's like, well, hang on, we can actually provide something very good. So I just started chipping away at working with them. And then they began to realize, oh, actually, osteopaths are pretty good. They know what they're talking about. And then bit by bit, our philosophy starts to have an impact. And then it just has grown. And so, yeah, it's very much it's not the whole thing, but it's certainly a very foundational aspect of how the business is.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I want to ask you about, I guess, your business structure, right? And what you've set up there with Atune. How have you gone about creating that particular structure that is, number one, profitable, and number two, I guess, allows kind of individual practitioners to grow, right? Like, you mentioned before that you don't, it's not like a lease agreement. It's not like you're leasing out space to different people. They're all actually working under the banner of your particular business. And so how have you made, what kind of structure have you set up to allow people to kind of grow individually, but also, I guess, make the whole thing grow as well?
Yep, that's a great question. So look, the structure is that as long as you're willing to work within the Attune business and you get what we're trying to achieve. So for me, vision is the most important. I will interview people, and if they light up about what we're doing, I've had people sit across going, it's been my dream to work in a place like this. They're virtually in the door, because they've got it, their hearts for that integration. We want to work with people who also have the same vision and philosophy and ethos, if that makes sense. Now, that can vary. Like, some people aren't as much into it, and that's okay. They get the benefit of it. But in the end, you don't want a bad apple, because a bad apple spoils the lot. And so for me, when it's all said and done and how have I built it all, it's all about making sure that who we get in, who we allow into our space, into our culture, into our business is the right fit, and to say no to the wrong fits. So I've said no to as many as I've said yes to, and we don't just take anybody. And I think that's probably one of the key things that we have found has been, beneficial, because if you're working alongside other people who get it as well, you're so much happier, the workplace is better, the environment is better. And look, everyone says, how do you have 18 different health disciplines all working together under the one roof? Aren't they killing one another? Well, if they all sign up knowing that that's what it's all about, and they're willing to, collaborate and share, and, that starts the process. Does that mean that we don't have fights and conflicts and all those things and differences of opinion? Even with we've got the 9 osteopaths and 9 physios. We differ greatly in some of the ways that we look at things, but actually when you look at it, our philosophies and the way we're approaching things, it's just made from a different way, but it all comes together for that particular client because we're willing to work together, and it actually is more beneficial in the long run for that client if we can work alongside one another. Same with EPs, same with nutritionists. I mean, when you've got this smattering of people all at your fingertips. It just makes the care you can provide just so much more appealing and powerful because you've got a team. And so the structure is really foundational in the vision that we have. And if people want to join us, and then from there, as I say, I don't care. I mean, they can lease a space, and I've said, some specialists, it's very hard to get them to work in any other arrangement. So I'm happy for them to work on a lease arrangement within the building as long as they work in our team. I have contractors, I have employees. However people want to engage is fine by me, because I don't want to limit that. I'm happy to make it work for them as long as it works for the business as well. And we're paying our bills and everyone's happy. And there's a lot of structure around that, because it'd be simple just to say this is the way we do it. And but then what would happen is, if we have a dietitian, for example, the way that they work is so different to a GP. They can't earn as much money. They're not set up the same way. And so if the structure was the same, then you basically you'd be saying, well, dietitian can't really work here because it doesn't fit for them. So you've got to make it work for them within the context of they're willing to work with the vision, if that makes sense.
Yeah. In the beginning, mate, it wouldn't have been, I guess, one of the attractive things with having such a large practice is that, working in that team environment, having lots of people around you, being collaborative, and I guess, it wouldn't be a quiet place to work. And so that's attractive to some people, I get that. But that wouldn't have been how it always was. And so in the beginning, how were you able to, I guess, I know you've talked about the vision, you've talked about the kind of the I guess the values that you have, right?
Yep.
But in the beginning, when you didn't have such a large clinic, how were you able to get people on board and get them busy and get them kind of to the point where you can then get the next person on board and the next person? Like, what were some of the challenges there, and how were you able to overcome them?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So every area is different. So for example, getting a GPs are as rare as hen's teeth. So the first part there was getting the right one and then just letting them go. For other areas, for massage, they tend to fit nicely with osteo. I think getting a new profession in, so let's just use psychology as an example, it's completely different. What you need in the first instance, you need to get someone who really does love what it is that you're doing and buys into that, and then is able to build up their practice, or have had a practice and they want to bring it across into the environment that we're creating, which is that happens several times. Like, I've had a couple of people who had a business, they wanted to join Attune, and so that's happened. So for example, the lady that I worked firstly with, Kim, as an osteopath, she has now come into Attune and works within Attune. We had a great relationship. We never had, it was, and she's a wonderful person. And just to be able to, flip that around and now work together is great. So there's many different ways, and that's the thing. I wasn't limited to one particular way, or this is the way it needs to be, and allowing different scenarios to come along and then to work with them to actually incorporate it in, as long as it all fitted. And then in terms of, if you get good people, then they tend to attract clients because they're good at what they do. And that's the other thing. So we're not just accepting anyone as well. Like, they've got to fit the vision, but they've also got to be great at what they do. And particularly the first one, you need to have someone who's a leader who can pave the way a little bit, so then that they're willing to, and that's where multiplication happens, isn't it? You've got a great psychologist who can then, add another one and another one, because that's what they're doing. And so picking those key ones first up was really important. And the same with osteopaths. Like, the first osteopath I got, he was amazing. And he is being able to take the osteo department to a whole other place that I could never do, because he gets it. He's a great practitioner, and so forth. So
why hasn't that osteopath gone out on his own, Simon?
Look, I think that I
don't know who you're talking about. I'm just asking the question because I'm interested. Why hasn't, if somebody can run that team, what you say in your own words, probably better than what you could, in terms of leading osteopaths, Why wouldn't that person? I mean, I'm asking you this question to understand your particular philosophy and how to retain people
Yep.
and give that
Yep.
information to the viewers. Why hasn't that person chosen to go out on their own and just say, "Hey, I can go rent a space and do this"?
Well, I think one, they realise just how difficult it is to run your own business, and some people it's just not for them, and that's completely understandable. Two, valuing who they are and what they achieve and what they do, and making sure that you can sow into that, I think is really important. And I think that if you create an environment that is unique and different, people want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And really that's what Attune is. We're trying to transform healthcare in our nation. That's really part of our vision is, not just what I can do. It's actually, what we're doing together collaboratively is actually having a nationwide impact at the moment. And to be a part of that, I guess is something that is exciting. It's good to be a part of something that is not just about making money. There is a purpose and a reason and a value beyond just dollars and cents. And I guess that's part of what Attune is. Everyone has their own different things that they're doing, and but I guess that's the philosophy that I come with. Is it's not just about the money. It's about let's contribute something to people and the community that's different and it's exciting. And I guess people like to be a part of that.
Yeah, right. And have you found that, I guess, you mentioned earlier with GPs and how difficult they were to bring on board or to find
Yep.
them. What has been your, what kind of advice could you give people that might be going down the same path and wanting to bring on a GP into their practice, into their either allied health or osteo practice? What would be some advice that you could give them that would, I guess, that maybe they might not know? Like, what are GPs looking for? What do they want? What are they, what are they trying to achieve within their business? And how could you make it really attractive for them to come on board?
Great question. Look, I'm just trying to think. I think GPs are like anyone. They want to contribute to society. Like we all, in some way, shape or form, when we get into health, we have the ideal beginning that we're here to help people, to contribute to society, to do something of value. And GPs are exactly the same. They don't, they have such a hard job. They have to deal with so much. And if they feel like they can contribute to something that is beyond themselves, that excites them. Like I know some of the GPs that have joined us, they are just so excited because we've got this integrated setup that it just fits with what they want to be able to achieve. And so, they seek us out now. Initially, it was really very much about, finding that first one or two. This is what we're doing. Does this fit with you? Finding those GPs that actually resonated with how the little Attune was actually doing things. And that's how the first couple came on board, because they're like, we love this concept. We love what you're trying to achieve. We would love to sort of, join in. So, the doctor joined a day, then became two. And then really that opened it up, because then we have a doctor, then other doctors, and what I would say to my team is that once we've got someone who, like a GP or a psychologist who's working and enjoying it, go and find more. Go and find like-minded people like you. Like, we don't put out ads very often, and you put out an ad and are you going to get anyone anyway that's any good? You don't know. Whereas if you get your team to find that next person, and that's where the team began to grow, and you find the right people that fit. So I would say that, if you're looking for GPs, don't sell them on money. Like, that's not...
Well, you're not going to compete.
Well, that's right. You're not going to compete. You need to sell them on values, on the fact that you're going to contribute to something more. It's all about the client journey, which that's what my heart is. It's about actually doing something better for the clients. And if you can collaborate, work together and help one another, and if that's where the GP's at, and this is the thing, if they're willing to do that, you're already halfway there, because they're open. If they're not open, I wouldn't even go there, because it's just going to be a headache for you, for everyone else, and it will just be, it'll be just painful. So you've got to really appeal to something bigger than themselves. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, right. You mentioned that you went from, I guess, your own home, working in your own home, to then releasing a commercial space, and then going from that commercial space to an even larger space that you, I guess, constructed. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. So I
Right.
bought a building in 2011,
Yeah.
and we moved in 2020, and that's a purpose-built centre. Yes.
Right. And so, did you find that, I guess, the commercial space you were in, or all the commercial spaces that were available, were bottlenecks to your business? Was that a must-do thing for you? Look, I've got to purpose build what I want so that this vision can kind of grow.
Oh, absolutely. We were bottlenecked for years in where we were at, and because it took nearly 10 years to get it through council, because it was so unique what we were trying to achieve, it was just a very long journey. And the business continued to grow, but we could not do what we needed to because we didn't have the facilities. Like we didn't have even a surgical space for the GPs. We were sharing spaces between psychologists and dietitians. So there were so many things that bottlenecked it, and absolutely. Premises are probably one of the biggest bottlenecks for your practices because, and that's why Attune is it's 5,000 square meters, the whole building. There is a recreational part at the back, but it's an enormous footprint, and it needed to be to allow, and so, when I bought the property, I only had 8 staff at the time. And by the time we got to move in, which was not expected to take as long as it did, I think we had, about 60 or so forth that were able to all move into that one location. And now we've grown to where we are at now and near at capacity in the building that we are currently in. So,
Yeah, great.
So it's very much, property does bottleneck you.
Okay, I'm going to circle back and ask you about buying that property, but before I do that, I want to take you back to that time where you were a little bit bottlenecked in your previous commercial space, because most people don't have a large 5,000 square meter kind of footprint that they can use. Most people could probably get some advice from you regarding their particular situation now, which is probably a smaller commercial place. And so how were you able to juggle, I guess, having all those practitioners? How many rooms did you have in the previous space? How many rooms were there?
So we constantly grew. So we just continued to lease more and more space where we were at, which we were fortunate that leases just came available and then we were able to take them.
Right.
I think we had 17 rooms by the time we were nearing moving in, but we started with 4, and it just slowly grew from there.
Right. Well, that's pretty unique. I mean, when you go look at a place, it's very rare that there's just rooms that have been able to kind of lease out. But I guess then, did each practitioner have their own room, or did you share premises? Did the physios and the osteos share, the psychologists share with the GPs? How did it work? How were you able to juggle it all?
It was a mission, and it still is a mission even now, because we still juggle. So the physios, osteos do share because we utilise the same thing. Massage therapists not so, because they need a particular table. So we've got specialised massage rooms. GP need their own space. Psychology can share with dietitians, can share with breathing therapists, can share. EPs, they need their own gym, they need their own space. So everyone needs a different. But look, again, when we would get people on board, we would just say, this is what we've got. They just wanted to come on board. So we would say, can you use this space? Can you share this space? And we would just try to make it work for them. Even the GPs initially, we couldn't deck out their rooms completely the way they needed, and we just had to make do. But the thing was that we did have, and for many years we had the end result. Everyone saw it, they could see it. And so I think that certainly helped people, carry on the journey, hang in there, because there was a bigger thing coming. That's a hard one. We were fortunate that we could just continue to grow. And look, we did lease extra space. I did take on 2 extra spaces to allow us to continue to grow. And then we reduced that back once the building was built, and then we only have 1 extra space at another place, which is smaller, and then the bigger one. So you just got to sort of make it work as best as you can. I think in some ways, but where people can share, you've got to set it up from the beginning, and then they're comfortable. But as soon as you give somebody a space and say, this is yours, taking it back's very difficult.
Right. Well, that's good advice. And so following on from that, were you looking at the rooms from your particular point of view? did you look at the rooms from, I guess, an income point of view? Did you say, look, this room is, making me X amount of income, whereas this room is making, X to the power of 3? And so are you trying to leverage, I guess, the floor space in terms of making it profitable? And how did you balance that out with, I guess, keeping the practitioners happy and making sure that, because you've got to treat each practitioner different, because a dietitian is seeing a consultation for like 45 minutes to an hour, whereas your osteos could probably see someone for 20 minutes or half an hour and leverage more out of that room than a dietitian can. So how did you balance all that and make people, I guess, not feel like they were being shortchanged?
That's been a good challenge that I've constantly battling.
Yep.
But I guess my philosophy is it's not about money. So I am not looking at a room going, I can get more money out of that. I'm looking at a room going, how can I utilize that for the whole business to make it work for the client? And then from that place, yes, I have to pay my bills and I need to make sure that it's financial. But like I will make decisions based on the vision rather than on the finances, because we're not about the money. Well, I mean, we've got to pay our bills. It's about, okay, a dietitian, yes, they're not going to earn per capita anywhere near what a GP can or a specialist. But if I don't have dietitians, then lifestyle medicine and actually the well-being of the client is not going to benefit. So dietitians are great and are very valuable and are needed. And yes, do I generate the income that I need from them? No, but do they add incredible value to the business that we've got? Absolutely. And so the value is seen in what they contribute rather than monetary. But then I'll make that money up in other areas because, and so you just got to balance that intention. Absolutely. And I'm not foolish enough to go, I'm not thinking about money, because I have to make it work. I've got to make the business tick over. And I've got to pay everyone's wages and bills and ensure that that's all happening. And that's an important part of running a good business. But if that's your only focus, it bleeds through as well. People know it, they can feel it, and they sense that. And that becomes problematic, I feel. But if people come on, signed up, and that's all what they sign up to earn money, then that's what they expect, that's what they want. But if they're signing up for something else, then you need to live that. And keep that intention. And so I guess that's how I would do it. That doesn't answer your question, but
no, it does.
Yeah.
I can empathise there. I remember having a conversation with my wife many years ago about, even massage therapy, and she would say, "Sami, your osteopaths make a lot more money than your massage therapists do. Why don't you just lease why don't you just take on more osteopaths to fill that room?" And I'm like, well, one of the problems is if I do that and I don't have massage therapists there, my patients, my clients want to be able to see a massage therapist. If they don't see them at my clinic, they're going to see them somewhere else. And then you can look at it from that point, and that's very valid too, that you'd lose them. You could lose them, and that you don't want to do that. And I guess you got to see it as a service that you're providing your client base. That's right. Sometimes you might make 10 cents on the dollar in one place, but then you make 150 cents on the dollar somewhere else, and I guess it balances itself out. So you do have to have that vision in place, and it's not always about the money. It's about what you're trying to bring to the table in terms of servicing your patients. That overall picture, though, that I have to say this, that overall picture that you have also has to make money.
Absolutely.
And I think if you lose the war and you win the battle, you're doing all right. But if you win the war and you lose the battle, you're probably going to be out of business pretty quick.
Absolutely.
I can really appreciate what you're saying there. So I want to circle back and speak to you about getting that loan to buy the property of your current practice. I see you smiling there, because I went through something very similar recently. But tell us about that process when you go to a bank and you say, I want to buy this property, I want to put some money down, and this is what my vision for it. Was that an easy process for you? Was it just at the time were you financially pretty good where they were just happy to give you the money? Did you have any problems there?
Oh, well, isn't that a story? So initially, there's a couple of elements to that. So initially, when I bought the first part of the building, it was a fairly dilapidated building that required quite a bit of work, which was exactly what I wanted to do. So
Was it a commercial building?
commercial building, yep.
Right.
So I picked it because it was central, it was massive, it had the ability to do what I needed. I didn't realise how difficult it was going to be to get it all sorted out through council. But I journeyed that journey because I had a vision of what I wanted, and I saw that a purpose-built building is going to be a key part of that. So that initial, I basically used every cent that I had to buy that initial property, and then I had to wait 10 years to be able to make it like an ongoing concern. Now, it was a business that was running there that I was able to continue, and I actually made that profitable, and was able to tick it along while I tried to get the development. So that was helpful. But then actually getting the money from the bank to do the big renovation, which was a $6.5 million reno. I was a bit more, probably 7 now, I think all up, but it was about that. That was a difficult one. So it took me 2.5 years, and I went to 23 banks before they gave me one. And the reason is because I own the business, I also own the building. And so they actually still value my building now as a vacant building because there's no arm's length transaction happening.
Let me clarify this just for the listeners. So you found a building. You were currently practicing out of a commercial space that you were leasing at that time. You went and found a building that was pretty run down, but that building already had an existing business in that building. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you not only bought that business, you not only bought the building, you bought the business that was associated in that. And what kind of business was that, Simon? Can you share that with us?
Squash business. Yeah, it was a squash business. So
Squash courts.
It was the largest squash centre in the Southern Hemisphere.
So you kept running that business, the squash business, out of the building. And was that paying down the money that you spent on the building? Were you having to cover that?
Not fully. It didn't
fully.
quite cover it, but just about.
Right. Okay.
At the beginning, it didn't, but by the end, it was because the business was going better. It probably paying, just enough.
So not only were you kind of running the multidisciplinary practice that you say Atune, you're also now trying to reinvigorate a squash court business, get that to a point where at least you can make it viable, that you can keep this building living long enough so that you can actually renovate it. Then you had to take something to the bank or go and find a bank that would loan you up to about $7 million to do the renovations that you had planned. And I'm assuming to be able to do that, you would have had to do some plans already, get an architect in place, put the designs in place.
I spent probably, I think it was about $350,000 on DAs and plans and all that to get it to a place where we could
building, mate. To buy the building, did you pay out of your own pocket for that building, or did you have to go to the bank as well?
I loaned some money. Absolutely, yes. It was a loan for sure. Yep.
Yeah, right. And
so I don't come from any wealth, so
no, that's okay. And so were you? Did you go through like people like Medfin, or did you go through, or to buy the building? Did you go through just normal channels with the bank, or
I had a business broker.
Right.
So originally I was going to get medical funding for the building.
To purchase the building. To purchase the building.
No. I just did a normal. I can't even remember who
normal
it was.
Commercial loan.
Yeah, I think it was Commonwealth Bank then. I think I can't even remember. I think it was Commonwealth. So that was just a loan that I was able to get out, and then to then do the fit out. Then I got a business broker to actually help me out. So yeah.
Right. And so that particular process of doing the fit out, which you said was up to about $7 million, you shopped it around 23 different banks.
Well, no, I got no's from 22 banks, and the 23rd bank said yes. Okay.
So what was it about that yes? What made that a yes, and what was different compared to the others?
They weren't a bank. They saw the vision. They actually saw what we were trying to achieve, and actually, I remember the banker said, "Wow, this is unbelievable. You have got a plan. You know what you want, and I
Yeah.
love what you're trying to achieve here. I can see it. And because you could see it rather than the numbers, like if you just put the numbers, all the banks, and because of the way that it was structured, and because there was no arm's length deal, because I
Mm.
own both the business and the building, it looked like there was no business moving into the building. So then why would you lend money to that?
Mm.
But when I was able to share what it was and the fact that here's this business that is thriving, and this is the thing that's moving in, they saw the value in that. But it took me to convince them and all their different people to go, you know what, we see the value in that. Now, it's hard to explain this, but a couple of years before that, I had banks jumping all over it, but because the lending criteria changed outside my control,
Yeah.
they became very wary because of that, what they call vacant possession.
Yeah, lending rules and the APRA. I know we fall under APRA, but that's AH, uh, PRA. I think there's a APE. I think APRA is the banking regulator as well
Potentially, yeah.
for lending, and their rules change constantly. And I know there's a little bit more give with commercial versus residential loans at the moment. Residential loans are quite tightly held. There's a bit more movement on commercial stuff, but you said that it wasn't the bank that lent you the money. Were they just a private lender? Were they a kind
So
of
they were what are they called? A society bank.
right?
Yep.
And you said that they bought into your vision.
Yep.
Was that did you still have to, because there wasn't an arm's length between the business and the property? Did you still have to personally guarantee that loan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the business did as well. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, right. And so there's lessons in that for people that are listening, that it's a lot more complicated. Just trying to think about where you were in your own home practicing, going, I've got this vision of opening my own business. The complications of not even getting to where you were, just the complications of buying a property to put your clinic in, which doesn't have to be as large as Atunes. It's not a straight road. It's a very curvy, windy, hilly, up and down road. Um,
And look,
and
the important thing with all of that is to get the right people to help you,
yeah,
because you're not
yeah,
an expert, and you never will be in those areas, because that's not your. I mean, you're an expert as an osteopath. So finding the key people that you can trust that can give you the right advice is critical as you move forward, because you get the wrong advice and all of a sudden you're in a world of hurt.
So at the moment, I'm pretty sure NAB are reviewing their policy around no deposit lending to ARPA registered practitioners. I know at the moment that dentists, GPs pretty much can go and get a commercial loan at 100% finance.
Yep.
Pretty much no questions asked. Whereas osteopaths don't really fall under. I think physios are good with it. I'm not so sure about the chiropractors, but I know osteopaths are nowhere near it. And I've had conversations with senior banking people from NAB around this, and I know that they're reviewing their particular policy at the moment. What would it have meant to you, Simon, had you been able to do that? Had you been able to just go to the bank and have them say to you, "Oh yeah, you're ARPA registered. We know about you. Here's 100% finance on the commercial property that you want to get," given that you have the right business plan in place. How do you think that would change? How do you think that would change, I guess, the life of an osteopath who's just forget? I mean, yours is a pretty large deal. That's
Yep.
not what we're seeing. I mean, that's
Of course.
not common.
Yep.
A common thing is maybe you go and you find a little commercial property that's worth $1 to $2 million, and you want to buy that and move your practice to it, and your practice hopefully should be generating enough money to, I guess, lease that property and pay it down, and not having to, have $200,000 in the bank account to go and put a deposit down.
Yep.
Is like, that's massive. What do you think that would mean for the profession if we were
Uh,
able to
there's,
achieve that?
that's an interesting thing. I've probably got two thoughts on that. It would certainly make it easier to, unbottleneck, if you like, the property issue for osteopaths who want to grow and build a business, and get into that realm. But the flip side of that is that there is value in actually working your butt off and having to actually get to a place where you can do that. Because if you just throw money at people and they don't value or actually appreciate that, it can actually play against them, because all of a sudden you get this money, it's easy, and then you've now got to actually pay that off, and you've actually haven't learned how to go through the process of making sure, if that makes sense. And I think there's value in having to work hard. Like, I look at all the obstacles that I've had to overcome as a business person to do where we're at right now, and I recognize that all of that really hard stuff and those moments where you're completely stressed out of your brain because you don't know what's going to happen, that's actually grown me as a person and as a leader, and has given me a resilience for the next challenge and for the next thing. And I think that there's those two things. Like, yeah, absolutely, getting that would have been amazing, to be honest. It would have meant that I could have moved into my premises a lot quicker, a lot more successfully. But would have I learnt the lessons that I needed to get to the place that I am? I fear that it could be too easy as well. And that's. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I don't think banks are going to throw money at you like that. I mean, you still have to. I mean, if I go to the bank and I say, look, I've got a property for 1.5 million, I'd like some money, they're going to still ask for my financials to make sure that I can repay that loan. They just might not ask me for the $200,000 up front. They might just say, look, we're happy to give you 100% finance, but looking at your financials, Sammy, mate, you're not ready for this large loan yet. You don't. It doesn't make sense. So, but if they look at your financials and go, mate, you've got a healthy business, you're making good turnover, you're keeping your expenses down, your net profit's pretty good, that should indicate that you've actually done the hard yards, and you probably all that would do is just get you out of having to put. And what people are doing now, it's not like they're putting 200 grand aside. They're mortgaging their own homes to kind of then take that money out and then obviously pay it down, and that then increases the pressure on their own home loan. But yeah, I get what you're saying about having to do it a little bit tough to get there. I agree with you, but yeah, I don't think banks are going to just throw the money at you. You still have to qualify for that loan. Mate, Michael Jordan famously said that he missed more buckets than he made. What have been the key lessons from the failures that you've had? Like, can you give us some lessons that you've learnt from some of the times where you haven't made the bucket?
Yep. Look, I think that what I mentioned before, picking the right people. When I've picked the wrong people, it's been really difficult, and it's created a lot of problems for the business. So, making sure that you get the right people on the bus. They talk about, getting the right people on the bus in the right seats is a really important part of business. And so I think, being slow to hire and making sure is really, really important, because they're going to create the culture that you set. Like you set it, but they're the ones there as well, and they're going to have an impact. And particularly when you're smaller, as you get bigger, you can handle bad eggs a little bit better. You still don't want them, but you can handle them because you've got more of the culture that actually is going in one direction. But when you're smaller and you get someone who is contrary to what it is you're trying to achieve, that's a massive block to the way your business is working. So I would say that getting the right people, getting the right consultants, the right people to help you that's critical. Every step of the way, getting business coaching. If you're a business owner, getting someone to be outside and say, hey, why are you doing that? Why would you do it like that? Why don't you do it like this? Making sure that you don't just try to do everything, and making you get that advice from the people. And, I started out, I just did it myself and, doing everything. And then I started getting some wisdom, and I realized, I actually need those people to be talking to and actually giving them permission to say, stop being stupid. Why are you doing that? Because it helps shape you as a person, as a leader. And then the third thing is your growth as the clinic leader is critical. Like, if you're not investing in yourself, then the business is never going to grow. You're going to lead the potential of your business based upon what you're learning and growing into. And I'm not saying osteo now. I'm really talking as a business leader, because if you run a business, you're a business leader. So you need to be developing your business acumen, your skill. You need to be inputting into yourself for your business. Otherwise, you're going to stagnate very quickly.
Yeah, right. Talk to us about the current challenges within the osteopathy framework of trying to obviously find and retain graduates.
Yep.
What's that been like for you? And can you, I guess, share some of the challenges that you found, and what are some things that have worked for you? Hello, everyone. Just a quick break to give you some information on where to best find me. The first place is the private Facebook group called the Successful Practitioner Pathway. I've set up this private group as a place where practitioners can go and get tips and advice on how to best accelerate their practice and improve their clinical practice skills. The second place to find me is at successinpractice.net. That is where the Success in Practice signature program is housed. You can find more information about me and how I can best help you achieve success in your practice. So, the two best places, the private Facebook group, the Successful Practitioner Pathway, and successinpractice.net. I will link to both those places in the show notes, so for more information, please see the show notes. Now, enjoy, and back to the show.
Yeah, so initially, before COVID, we had a fairly good success rate in getting osteopaths to come up. And a lot of that was to do with, a business that was a little bit unique, and people were looking for something outside, and wanting to develop and grow and learn. And so that was really positive. I think now the challenge is, after COVID, there seems to be a real, and maybe it's this generation coming through, they just do not want to move. And that they want to stay at home. And they want to work half a day a week, and get paid the big bucks. So there's a funny mindset at the moment in some of the younger guys around what work looks like.
Why do you think that's happened, Simon? I mean, you must have
Yeah.
some commentary on this. Why do you think there's been that mentality of I don't want to call it entitlement. I'm not, it's more so to do with wanting as much as possible for as least as possible.
You can call it entitlement. I think it's this generation, and just the way that they get everything, they get it instantly. That they don't have to work hard for stuff. They've never had to. Everything's at their fingertips. So I think there is that little bit that has that flows through. Yeah, look, I don't know the answer and the reasons. I mean, but it's very noticeable since COVID that people are really happy just to bunker down and not really take risks or challenge themselves, and just to play it safe. If that's what it feels like, again, I'm only judging that very, very much on the fact that we just cannot get people to come up anymore, and that's unfortunate, I guess. So,
do you think we've done ourselves any favors when we, I guess, with maybe looking at, look, there's a lot of talk now around, for example, a graduate, and I think there's a massive concentration of graduates in Melbourne. That's not a secret. There's a massive concentration of osteopathy clinics in Melbourne, and that's great. I think osteopathy is really booming over there because there's an osteopath in every suburb, and that's great. But you hear of things like, I hear it because obviously having this podcast, people talk to you as well, where graduates don't want to take time or days off to go and do PD courses, personal development courses, professional development courses.
Yep.
They want to be paid to go and do those professional development courses because a lot of them are employees, and they feel they don't even have to pay for the course, that their workplace should pay for it, that they should then not only be paid for the course, but actually be paid to go to the course as if they're working. And so and a lot of clinics have kind of gone, yep, we'll do that because that's what we'll do to get you to come on board. But do you think that we've shot ourselves in the foot by maybe allowing a little bit too much of that to go on, rather than actually encouraging our graduates to value their chase for osteopathy, like them actually chasing it and going
Yep.
and learning themselves. Like, you know, it's famously said that you've got to go chasing osteopathy. It's just not going to be, it's not going to come to you, you know. Have we done that? Do you think we've allowed that to happen? Should we take responsibility as a profession for that, or is it something that's just generational?
Well, that's look. I don't know the answer to that one, to be honest. It's a very good question. I think that it's very individual for people. There is definitely a cultural shift, and I think that the one thing that is important is that people do value their education, and if they expect everything on a platter. Eventually, that's going to come crashing down for everybody, because that's the world doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Yeah, I do we
Like
take
your
responsibility?
particular vision for Atune has a lot
Yep.
to do with the holistic approach, trying to get the best for the client, looking at the entirety of the patient, not just their physical, but also their mental, their spiritual well-being, and making sure that you look at that lifestyle medicine. But that might not always translate into, I guess, the I don't want to even say the business mindset, but the professional and personal growth mindset of the particular practitioner you have there. They might be
Yep.
very holistic in their approach to the client, but yet they might be very, I guess, entitled, for lack of a better word, in their approach to how they deal with the business that they're dealing with. And so, do you find, have you had to address that within your particular business? Have you had that experience in terms of people wanting their own, having you pay their way, I guess, in that realm? And have you had to deal with that?
Oh, look, no, I have to say not hugely. I mean, I give credit to my team that they are passionate about what they do, and so
Yeah.
they're willing to push for it. So part of that is that we chose them because of that purpose, so they sort of get it a little bit. So I mean, we run lots of courses, and when I mean that, like, we have integrated team meetings together. Physios coach osteos and vice versa. So the training we provide is quite unique and very comprehensive. So I don't feel that there's many people that push the bounds too much, because they recognise that what we're doing is a little bit different, and it's not that commercial business mindset that I guess maybe some other businesses have. So I wouldn't say I've seen too much of that in our business, which is a credit to our team. But the younger generation coming through, there is a little bit of that you certainly see at different times.
Yeah, right. Okay. Talk to me about, I mean, how you're seeing osteopathy at the moment. I like to kind of discuss this with a lot of the people that I've had on the podcast. Actually, before I do that, I want to ask you a question that I've asked others on the podcast, and I haven't added this to the run sheet on purpose. Being somebody of the early, or not the early, but I guess the 2000 RMIT vintage, in your particular viewpoint, what is osteopathy? What's an osteopath, Simon?
An osteopath is basically a holistic manual therapist who really addresses the whole person's function, and really looks at areas that aren't functioning the way they should, and therefore helps the body find what's the word? Will find itself functioning in a more optimal mechanism. And if we do that as an osteopath, whether it be visceral, whether it be structural, whether it be cranial, really for me that is the heart of who we are, is finding those things that aren't working the way they should, and allowing the body to find solutions so that they can actually function in a more optimal capacity.
Right. So you've just described the principles of osteopathy there. Would that be
Pretty much,
pretty
yeah,
much?
yeah, yep. And because I mean that's who we are. I mean, and that
Yeah.
should be what we bleed. Like, in the end, our
Yeah.
philosophy is what really sets us apart from all the other professions.
Yeah.
And we need to probably be
Yeah.
in many ways. That's what
So
we are.
when you sit amongst your team, who are quite large, are
Yep.
you still seeing a little bit of a, I don't want to say a difference, but I know, and I'm asking you this because you run quite a holistic place over there. Um, when your osteopaths sit there and they have discussions with your with the other therapists, do you kind of like, do you have a little smile on your face and going, aha, they get it? Maybe they're getting it a little bit more than some of the others. Like, do you kind of see the little difference there in their particular viewpoint? Is that something that makes you proud as somebody who's built what you've built there?
Oh, absolutely. I love it when, you know, a GP goes, this would be perfect for an osteopath, or, oh, that's what an osteopath will do, and this is how it works. And, or, the physios, we did a seminar just recently with the physios on SI joints, and it blew their minds how we go about that, but they got it and they saw it. And to see that and the philosophies that we have, and, you see over time how the physios think differently because they're just around us, and how the GPs think differently, and so it definitely bleeds through, which is, I think is fabulous. So yeah, there's definitely, I do see that. And look, I mean, even in our osteopaths, we've got a great crop of osteopaths. They all have different ways of doing things and different, slightly different. And that's a great thing because those, we all complement one another. Like, we've got more cranial, we've got more structure, we've got ones in between. And we've got so they all, have their place. And then you add in the physios, so everyone has their scope and place. And I do love how you see the team working together in such a comprehensive way, and I think that gives me great joy because that's what the vision was all about, is an integrated centre.
Yeah, so you outlined the vision earlier on in terms of, well, you actually said earlier on that when you take somebody on board and you have a chat to them, you very clearly outline your vision and make sure that they're on board with that and they understand it, and that that's the way they want to go. And if they don't want to go that way, that's fine. They're just probably not for you. But you outline that very clearly in the beginning.
Yep.
And so when you find, how do you protect that vision in terms of, I mean, because there are some forces that might act within society, within, I guess I don't want to say society, but within even healthcare, within the broader scope of healthcare. And I'll use an example of, say, maybe let's look at exercise science. And I guess its attempt to isolate the body into different bits and pieces. You've got weak glutes, or you've got this is, your core's not strong enough, or your multifidus is not firing. This kind of mentality, this kind of thought process. And how do you make sure that when you've got all these barrages, and there's a lot of this on social media, and it's hard to kind of not have your team exposed to it. How do you make sure that doesn't then seep in and maybe begin to change or become part of the vision that you didn't actually want to happen in the first place? How do you protect that? Or do you protect it? Are you someone that's aware of that, or am I talking something that you don't see as happening?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think that there's a lot of stuff out there. Do I protect it? Look, very much our core values. I protect, absolutely. This is who we are. This is how we function. But I don't then come on and say, you can't do this, you can't do that. I allow people to be who they want to be, because if they've got the core values, then they can express themselves, And so rather than coming from the top and compressing them down, I talk about wanting to lift them up and lift them out to be their very best. So if they go off this way, what that actually is doing is adding a reach that maybe has value, and maybe doesn't. But we can talk about that because we've got an integrated team where we actually keep each other accountable in some degree. It's like, well, why do you do it like this? And it's not these are the questions that we talk about. We don't say that's wrong. We say, well, why do you think that? Why is that more valuable for this client than that? And it allows that discussion, and then that shapes how people think, because it's been done in a way that's not pointing the finger. It's been done in, okay, well, explain that. Well, actually, I think of it like this. Oh, that's actually interesting, because that's probably, you're right there. And then you add knowledge rather than squash it. So very much I am aware that there's different things and different thoughts, and I'm very particular about we don't have certain professions that work at Attune. There are certain things that are not something that we will allow into the space, just because
Can you
we
share
are.
that with us?
Oh, look, I
You
probably
don't have
not.
to. Right.
No, I mean, probably one is psychology. We very much protect the psychology space, and there are certain counselling services that probably
Right.
don't fit in because they're not as qualified. They're a bit more dangerous. That's a good example.
Right.
That's
Fair enough. Yep.
so we're very, even though we're multi-disc, you can't just accept absolutely everything because then then you've got nothing. But within the scope of the people that you've got, I allow them to express themselves in the way that they see fit. And, in the end, if they believe the glute switches on or not on, or is that really going to have a massive impact anyway? It just is their view on that. And, it's the same with, do you put ice or heat on a particular area? Both have benefits. Physio say one, osteo say the other, or, depending on, like, the science is really out on exactly. So does it really matter in the long run? Because there is obviously clinical effect both ways. Not getting too tied up on that is probably where I would say, we agree on way more than we disagree on. And so there's a few disagreements that you just sort of let slide and just focus on the good things.
Well, I guess from what my understanding of that, from what you just said, is that there are a lot of things you agree on because of the core values that you share, and
That's
the things
right.
that you don't agree on, you're quite open to the competition of ideas.
Absolutely, and that has to be the way, because if you're going to be an integrated centre, you've got to be
Yep.
willing to have that. But it's got to be done in the right way.
Yep.
And we talk about healthy conflict as one of our values. How do we have healthy conflict? Because we have really poor conflict in families at times. People yell, people scream, they want to get their own opinion, and they are right and you are wrong, and that creates division and problems. So if we can create a healthy environment that questions and inquires rather than points, it
Yep.
just changes the way people talk.
Yeah. Even worse, no conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, in terms of osteopathy, mate, where do you see some of the challenges that we've got coming up in this profession in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think one of our biggest challenges has always been having our place in the medical world established more firmly. I think we don't do ourselves any favours at times. I think we are so valuable. I mean, I look at all our GPs and how they absolutely love what an osteopath does. But it took them all a little bit of time to actually get to that place of, oh, I see the value. So we need to be great advocates of what we do in a way that doesn't alienate people just because they don't understand what we do. They might have a bias because they've been told certain things. We just need to see it for that, and we just need to keep on working at showing the naysayers, if you like, how good we actually are. So I think our place in the medical system should be central, but it's not at the moment. And I think we've got to be working as a profession at actually ensuring that our place is actually, known and secured well. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And I think the training, I mean, I'm not part of the university structure. I'm not part of what's happening. But it seems like we are losing a little bit of the philosophy because we're trying to be more medically orientated. And look, we have to balance that intention. I totally get that. But the beauty of osteopathy is our philosophy and the way that we approach the body. And we can't lose the essence of who we are for scientific, like scientific research, because some things we're just never going to be able to, some of the cranial stuff, we're never going to be able to prove the benefit of it, but yet we see it every day clinically.
Well, not in the current framework that they've got there for us in terms of randomized controlled trials and systematic
Yeah,
reviews.
absolutely.
And things like
We're never going to. Yeah,
that's
right.
going to be a very hard task because we're really trying to encapsulate the entirety of the patient, who is unique. Every single patient in front of you is unique, and so it's really hard to take that research study and extrapolate it down to the individual. But I think patient-reported outcome measures are going to be very valuable in the future in terms of helping us show the wider community, not just the public, but also the medical community, that look, our patients are reporting great outcomes, and ultimately that's what we care about. Yep. And so, yeah, you're right. The universities also have a role to play in that, in making sure that we're not just solely research focused. We need to maintain and keep, because we have it. It's there. We don't need to find it. We need to just keep the essence of what we've got there. And a lot of professions there. I've personally got a lot of physiotherapy, exercise physiology students, and even chiropractic students that work with me, and they when they see us work, they're quite jealous of the hands-on stuff that we still get. That's right. And we really want to maintain that, especially in the age of AI coming. Yep. And what that's going to do to the health space. I mean, that may probably take over a good 80-90% chunk of what EPs are doing at the moment. Down the track, and with advanced robotics, who knows what's ahead. And so that physical touch that we have, that allows people to really feel what we're trying to do for them, it's becoming more valuable, and it's a space that we really need to make sure that we're at the forefront of. Simon, do you see anything in terms of your particular business? What would it mean to have, I guess, an availability of the workforce, of having students being available to you, not just students, but also, I guess, graduates? I mean, if we had a course in either Sydney or Northern New South Wales.
Love it. So at the moment I have...
not Northern, more like Central Coast or higher up.
It'd be amazing, to be honest. Like, at the moment we have... all the second year medical students actually do a placement through Attune, because they get that integrated model. So the whole GP department love it, because it actually expands the GP's brain, and they actually get to experience. And most of them had no idea what podiatrists do and OTs. And it's amazing to think they have no idea about these things until they come and do a placement, and they're like, their eyes are open, like, wow. And then seeing osteo, like, I don't think I've ever had a medical student that has not been absolutely blown away by what we actually do and our knowledge. So having osteo students that could be more accessible would be, to be honest. And I would love, even from Melbourne, like we would, them to come up and to be able to experience, work with us, and even do student placements in some form. It would be great, but there just doesn't seem to be that mechanism, and there used to be, but again, COVID's killed a lot of that stuff, and I think we've lost a little bit of that, because I think the experience, like, I know when I was in 4th and 5th year, I went everywhere. I went to as many osteopaths as I could find and watched how they work, because I learned so much about the way they approached the client, the way they talked, just those one or two little tricks. Then you put that all together, and what that does is builds up a knowledge base that you can actually then, but it just doesn't seem to be that's the desire anymore. And I really wish that the university would really help facilitate that in some form, because I think that's key to really expanding our osteopathic abilities in the future. Yeah,
the repertoire has to improve, and the way that you improved yours is by seeing a whole bunch of different people. Absolutely. And I think that's the best way to do it. And so, we need to have that exposure. All right, Simon, I want to thank you for your time tonight. I know we've talked a bit, we've kind of gone over a whole wide range of topics, but I think it's been quite productive for myself, especially in the listeners. So I want to thank you for your time. Stay on the line with me, but for everyone else, thank you for joining me on this episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.